Hello and welcome. There was a time where I was pro-Israel and anti-Palestine, and the reason I changed is because of these guys. You've seen them everywhere: The Dean Show, 5 Pillars, Islam Channel, Al Jazeera, and much more. They are Orthodox Jews who argue that Zionism is not Judaism and that Palestine should be free. These are the Neturei Karta. Whenever they appear online, all the videos are flooded with comments of love and support coming from Muslims, which would debunk any kind of narrative that, yeah, Muslims and Jews, they just want to kill each other because it's written in the Torah and the Quran and stuff. So I first saw them when I came to London in 2013 and I was tasked with filming a pro-Palestinian demonstration. And then they were on the top of a bus and I was wondering, who the hell are these guys? Because when I embraced Islam, I didn't understand anything about Israel and Palestine. At best, I would say, I don't know, but it's a complex issue, as so many people say. I would believe that Israel were the good guys and Palestine was just a terrorist state. Many people argue about the utility and the use of these online debates we see about these demonstrations, about even making videos about this. Activism takes many shapes and forms. Just the fact of seeing them changed my perception and led me to research much more deeper into the issues that are going on. Follow me in this investigative journey to know, who are these guys? What are their arguments? And where do they come from in the first place? And how are they even perceived in the wider Jewish communities?
It is true, it is a fact that Jews lived and flourished in the Muslim and Arab lands.
So this video is taken from The Dean Show because I found it is the most concise video you can get on the internet with most of the arguments. All the links in the description. First, if we investigate visually what's happening there, one may think it's a very strong signposting, meaning that he appears very visibly Orthodox Jewish, but then as a badge, he's got the Palestinian flag and he's got the Israeli flag with the forbidden sign inside it. Usually when I see such strong signposting, it would raise red flags with me. But at the same time, I think, is very much aware that lots of people wrongly associate Judaism and Jews with Israel and the aggressive policies. And this is why he has to make such a strong visual statement in the first place.
They went to these Arab and Muslim lands to escape persecution from the Crusades, from the Inquisition.
They were actually babysitting each other's kids. So if you're leaving a kid with someone, your own, flesh and blood, your joy of your heart, this is not your enemy.
The most precious possession that a person has. It's what God gave a person. They have many Jews who are alive today, to thank God, and they lived in the old courtyards in old Jerusalem.
To testify to this.
And they could, although unfortunately Zionism and the Zionists try constantly to vilify the Muslim people and try to recreate a scenario of as if we have some deep embedded religious conflict and hate.
So he makes an historical argument that back in the days, Jews and Muslims and Christians used to live in peace and that they would babysit each other babies. And historically, the Jews came to Muslim lands to escape persecutions from the Christians. And from there he argues that Zionism came to vilify Muslims, and I would say more exactly Arabs, because Christian Arabs are second-class citizens in Israel.
Now, what's the difference between Judaism and Zionism?
Yeah, with God's help, the Judaism is a religion. It is a covenant that Jewish people made some 3,000 years ago on Mount Sinai to be subservient to God and to follow the laws of the Torah. One of the statements is that in Hebrew it says, Mahu racham afatu teracham. Just as God is compassionate, you should be compassionate. Zionism is a mere 100-odd years. It was a movement of Jews who were estranged from the Torah, who detested the Torah and tried to transform this Judaism into Erzatz Judaism, a new Judaism which is pure nationalism, material concept, having an army, Olympic team, and to be a nation proud amongst other nations, totally removing in its essence the concept of godliness, removing God from the equation, hijacked the whole Judaism to legitimize and to put a facade of that it's kosher, that it's godly, what they're doing, when in truth it contradicts Judaism.
So can you be Jewish and an atheist?
Of course not. It's ridiculous. Judaism is belief in God. That's what it's all about, a covenant with God. It's not a nationalism. It's not some type of a country that you can be a Democrat, you can be a Marxist or something. Well, Zionism is exactly that. They were Marxists and they claimed to be Democrats, and they proudly claim that you don't have to be a practicing Jew and to be a good Jew as long as you're supporting the state. So that in and of itself shows the heresy and the blasphemy in what this is.
And then he goes on making religious arguments that sound very Muslim in a way, where, talking about God as Rahmah, which is the same root in Hebrew, so being a mercy, being compassionate. And he says that Zionism has basically hijacked Judaism to serve its nationalist agenda. Zionism is a form of nationalism which is very secular. In a way, this is what some fringe groups have also done with Islam, saying then they're on a sacred mission. And a very interesting point saying that you cannot be a Jew and an atheist, while many would consider being Jewish also from the perspective of ethnicity. He basically is just like some very radical Muslims who would argue that you can only be a Muslim if you practice your religion completely. All the videos show that how the Israeli government, the police and the military have again used force against their own citizens, against Orthodox Jewish people, and which is very well documented against, black Hebrews, Yemeni Jews, Sephardic Jews in the Israeli society. They are not as equal as, those who are secular and very rich and established.
In fact, they demonstrate daily. When they demonstrate and you see children we never carry arms, we're not military, they get beaten. Old men get assassinated, rabbis.
But let's focus on what is the group he belongs to, the Neturei Karta. Within the mainstream Jewish organizations across the world, they are considered as fringe, sometimes considered as extremists, sometimes even considered as terrorists. Some people don't even consider them as Jews.
Which means they're an extreme ultra-Orthodox Jewish group. They're the same as ISIS really in religion. They're not considered amongst the Jews to be Jews because they take it to such an extent, and they have a very, very, very bad reputation. And if they could, they would strap bombs around themselves and blow each other up.
Neturei Karta means guardians of the city, if you translate it. They are historically descendants of Hungarian and Lithuanian Jews who then settled in Jerusalem in the 19th century. So they are Haredi Jews, which means roughly, considered as Orthodox Jews. The Neturei Karta are opposed to violence, and they advocate the peaceful dismantlement of the Israeli state. Just that. The movement itself was founded around 1938 in Jerusalem as a splinter group of a bigger party, which was called Agudat Israel, which is again a whole Orthodox party founded in Poland in 1912. The party, the wider party Agudat Israel, was an Orthodox party strongly opposed to Zionism. But this until 1948, where they succumbed to the pressure from the Zionist movement and then had to align themselves because they thought that aligning with the Zionist cause would benefit them more on the long term. Some people would have considered them as having sold out. So they argue that the main causes of the divisions we see there is because of Zionism, to which argue that, Britain has its role to play in that, the US has its role to play in that, when Britain partitioned the land or suggested the partition, whatever. So they rely on an interpretation of the Torah and the Talmud, which is the Jewish law, that Jews are forbidden to recreate a state. They consider it as a rebellion against God because there would be, according to them, there would be a Jewish state only when the Messiah comes, which means basically at the end of times. Haredi Jews, or the Orthodox one, they don't have to serve in the IDF. They are opposed to the idea of voting and participating in the state of Israel in any shape or form. However, it is also important to remember that it is a socially and economically marginal group in Israel. They are usually among the poorest in the society. And although there is a Haredi party in Israeli politics, they are far, far, far from being the majority. It is considered by, I would say, the mainstream Jewish communities as a fringe group. To make an analogy, it would almost be for mainstream Sunni Muslims if it was a group of Ahmadis, let's say, or Ismailis. And a big chunk of Jewish societies would see them just like Muslims would consider this Imam Tawhidi, which I showed in the previous video. The thing is, religion can be interpreted in many, many, many different ways. And I can understand why some people hearing their arguments would consider this as blasphemy. And they are not the only group of Jews who are opposed to the occupation of Israel. I think it's important to know that. They're just maybe the most vocal and most visible. You have groups such as Shomer Emunim, Satmar, Malakim, and some other groups around the globe like Jewish Voice for Peace, American Council for Judaism, which also is a very, very old organization. But it's also important to remember that many Jews and many Israelis, Orthodox or not, and it's all over the spectrum, are really seeing a problem with the oppressive policies of the Israeli government. And I think one of their main arguments actually has been to highlight the contradictions between the narrative of the Israeli state and the actions of the Israeli state. Because while the Israeli state appropriates religion to justify its endeavors, they show that, they don't even respect the basics of you should not lie, you should not kill, you should not steal, and criticizing the Israeli government for what it is. It is a nationalist government which is secular, and they are very good at by showing a mirror through their own oppression, their own marginalization, that the government doesn't actually care about all its Jewish citizens equally. They are also aware that their mere existence has a very strong symbolic power, meaning that although it will not change the situation overnight, at least, they know that by making themselves vocal and visible, it will attract and intrigue people just like myself, who didn't know much about the situation, just by seeing them was intrigued and dig deeper into, okay, so what do they stand for? What is their message? Some people argue that demonstrations and TV debates are useless, but it takes just one person who may be on the fence or looking for knowledge, and just, seeing them, for them to do some more research. And if that person is in a position of power to actually change things on the ground, so they have accomplished their mission, feel free to look up more into their history and all the groups I've mentioned who also are part of the anti-Zionist movement, because I didn't know all that. It's a very, very old history. Because again, my intentions is to show that history is not black and white. This is why I'm interested to these fringe groups of the society, because I just find it fascinating, the dynamics. But I hope it was useful. Thank you again for watching, and again, take care of yourselves and each other.